my friends, this is Bea and you're part of Bea-Keeper of Plants. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, thank you. I would like to give a shout out to all of my new subscribers. Thank you for joining me on this planty journey. In today's video, we're going to talk about 4 Cattleyas orchids and the 4 care tips that I give my Cattleyas orchids. And we're going to do a quick repotting on 2 of them with something that's very special on 1 of my Cattleyas orchids. If that's something you're interested in, please continue watching and joining me with today's video. Green thumbs up, let's go. The first orchid here that I have, and I'm going to take it out of its pot, is a Cattleyas Paradise. I will put its entire name on the video for you. However, I had a little problem with it. You can see that it has already fallen apart. And the reason why it has fallen apart is because when I purchased this is considered a bag baby. I purchased this orchid this fall from Lowe's, and it's a Better Grow orchid. And it's a bag baby, and it has grown, but it's not growing very well for me. And so what I have done, I have taken it out of its pot, used a little bit of orchid bark, and some sphagnum moss in order for it to grow because it likes to be watered. However, it's not growing well. You saw the part that has fallen off. We're going to see how well it continues to grow for me throughout spring and summer. And we will take it from there. I will give you an update on it. So let's talk about the lighting first. The lighting that I give my Cattleyas orchids would be indirect to bright light. It gets morning sun from me in the morning and a little bit of afternoon sun as well. It does not like direct sun because if it does, the leaves will burn. And so morning sun is something that these orchids, for me, have enjoyed. Right now it's spring, of course, and I can put them outside to enjoy the sun because the sun is not as strong right now as it's going to get once summer hits. So right now I had 4 pieces. All I have left are 2, and there aren't any new pseudobulbs growing or anything. This particular orchid is a struggling orchid. So let's look at the second Cattleya. The second Cattleya is a volcano queen. This is another Better Grow orchid from Lowe's. I purchased it this particular winter, and it was a very small orchid. I like this orchid. It is growing wonderfully for me because I have 2 new pseudobulbs growing. You see one there, and then you see one here. Okay, 2 new pseudobulbs growing on this orchid. With the 2 new pseudobulbs, perhaps I will get a bloom spike coming from it this summer. So we've already talked about the lighting. Let's talk about the watering. I only water my Cattleyas when the orchid bark is dry, or whenever I see that the roots have turned totally white and that they need some hydration. Other than that, I do not water them. I don't overwater Cattleyas. Cattleyas have very thick leaves, okay? And so that tells me, that tells you that these type of plants do not need a lot of watering. So I go light on the watering. And an easier way to remember it is every 2 weeks, maybe twice a month. That is it on the watering. So this one here, another Better Grow orchid from Lowe's, a volcano queen, growing quite well. Okay? Set this one down. The third orchid that I'm going to share with you today is an orchid that I just purchased. I purchased this orchid from one of the places that I used to shop back in Texas, and it's called Orchid Leasing, and it is a place where branding. The third orchid I'm going to share with you is one that I purchased from Orchid Leasing. The third orchid I'm going to share with you is the orchid that I purchased from Orchid Leasing back home in Texas. And this orchid here is called Amazing. The third orchid that I'm going to share with you is one of the orchids I purchased from Orchid Leasing back in Texas. And its name is 𝗏𝗂𝒂𝒊𝒆�. Okay, let's look at it. This orchid is very full. It has a lot of leaves. You can see that it has bloomed before. It has bloomed on this leaf here. It has bloomed here. You can see one of the bloom spikes that is left there. And so what we're going to do with this guy, we're going to unpot it. We're going to take it out its pot, and we're going to put it in a brand new pot. So let's talk about the third care tip. The third care tip would be potting mix. Okay, let's take it out. Okay. This orchid has a lot of great roots. Okay. A great root system. Okay. Since this orchid is new to me, I am not going to fumble around with a lot of its roots. I also will show you one of a growing root tip right there. You see that? Okay. So that lets you know that this orchid here is growing quite well. So what I'm going to do is use one of the orchid pots that I purchased from Home Depot. This is an orchid pot. It has several holes for aeration. Okay. And we're going to pot it up in some orchid bark. This is the orchid bark that I use. I use a coarse blend, and a chunky blend. So I use a mixture, okay? And I'm going to fill the bottom along with the new orchid mix, and I'm also going to use some of the original orchid mix that it came in. I'm going to pick it up like this, okay? And I'm going to put it right in. Let me take some of it out. And I'm going to put it right in to its new home, feeling the feeling around the edge. So put it right into its new home, feeling around the edge of the pot. I do not need to cut any of the pieces that have already grown. It's going to be just fine growing the way it is. So I don't need to fumble around with any of that. So I'm just gently putting its old mix along with its new mix into its new pot. Okay. And here you can see that it has its new home. You can see how great it looks in its new home. Let's look at it. And it will continue to grow. Okay? I can continue to feel around where I see some of the orchid roots hanging out. And here, you see that? That's an orchid root. I'm just going to feel the top. I'm just covering it. No exposed orchid roots. and just push them down. Okay? And we're finished. We're finished with our third orchid. Okay? So far we talked about the lighting, we've talked about the watering, and we've talked about the potting mix. So let's take a pause and talk about our daily blossom. In today's daily blossom, we're going to talk about growth. We're going to talk about growth because that's what we're doing. We're growing each and every day. Not only are we growing each and every day, but our plants are growing each and every day. And growth is the process in which we develop day to day. It's a gradual process. It's not a one and done. It's a day by day process in which growth happens. And once again, we see it in ourselves as well as we see it in our plants. So there are 3 takeaways I would like for us to think about when we think about the word growth. So there are 3 takeaways I would like for us to think about. And the first takeaway would be, and so there are 3 takeaways that I would like for us to think about when we think about. And so the first takeaway, so let's look at our daily blossom. Our daily blossom word is growth. Growth is the process in which we continue to develop ourselves. It is not a one and done thing, it's continuous. And so one of the first takeaways I would like for us to think about is the journey that we're on. We're on a journey to growing each and every day. We are on a journey to develop ourselves each and every day. How are you doing that? How am I doing that? Okay? It's not a one and done. It's always continuous because it's called a journey. It's growth. Okay? The second takeaway I would like for us to think about is developing a plan. The second takeaway I would like for us to think about is developing a plan. What does growth look like for you? What does growth look like for me? What have I planned out for myself on this journey of growth? When we think about our plants, we have different things that we do for our plants in order for our plants to be healthy and thriving. It's the same way with us. We have a journey that we're on, the journey of growing, the journey of developing ourselves both spiritually and mentally. What does that plan look like for ourselves? Okay? And then the last takeaway for growth today would be make it personal. And the last takeaway for our daily blossom would be make it personal. This is a personal plan that is made out for you. It's not something that you have to share with everyone. It's your personal growth plan. And so when you're making that plan, think about how it is that you want to develop yourself mentally, spiritually, and what does it look like for you? Okay? So I would like for you to go on this growth journey for me. So I would like for you to go on this growth journey with me. Let's do it together, okay? So let's get back to our orchid repotting. So I would like for you to go on this growth journey with me. What does it look like? Share it with me. What have you done to grow and develop yourself both spiritually and physically? What have you done for your plants? Talk about it. Do that with me today, okay? So let's get back to our Cattleya orchids. The last orchid I'm going to share with you is this beauty here. This is the second orchid that I got from Orchid Leasing in Texas. So this is my newest orchid, and I am so proud of this orchid, okay? So let's look at it. You can see how big it is, right? But it also has a surprise for me. This is called a bloom spike. It has a surprise for me. And this is called a sheath. And the sheath is going to develop buds inside, and it's going to continue to grow. So the name of this particular orchid here is Amazing Thailand. That's its name, Amazing Thailand. And it is amazing. And according to the size of this sheath, it's going to be a ginormous flower spike. It's going to be huge. And so let's look at let's look at the fourth care tip for it. And we will talk about fertilizer. The fertilizer that I use would be 𝐸𝐴𝐷. I can sprinkle it in with its orchid mix. I can sprinkle it in with its orchid mix and the orchid, the orchid plant food. I can use it. And I also use this on my Hoyas, but we're not talking about Hoyas, okay? So let's look at our fourth orchid of today. And it is called Amazing Thailand. It is a huge orchid. Look at how big it is. And it has something very special that's growing. Look at this sheath. This sheath is going to develop into a beautiful, huge flower spike. And I'm so excited about it, okay? Let's talk about the fertilizer that I use with my orchids. One of the fertilizers would be this one here, okay? It's the orchid plant food. I use it with my orchids. I spray it on the orchid leaves like so. And I'm going to go on and spray this one because it has a bloom sheath on it, okay? And I use 𝗲𝐸𝐷. Okay, I just sprinkle this in with the orchid bark. Sprinkle it in, 𝗲𝐸𝐷. So this girl here, as you can see how large it is, I would love to repot it into its new home, but because it has a sheath growing, I'm not going to repot it. I'm going to let it continue growing and developing. Apparently, everything inside the pot is growing well, okay? And all I'm going to do is continue to let it develop. So I will sit it in like so in this pot. Once it finishes blooming, okay, I will cut off the bloom spike and I will repot it into its orchid bark. So let's look finally at the last 4 things that. So now let's go back and review the 4 care tips that I shared with you for my orchids. The first care tip I shared with you was lighting. I used indirect light. So let's go back and share with you the 4 care tips that I use with my orchids. So let's go back and refresh ourselves on the 4 care tips. Lighting, indirect lighting, morning sun, a little bit of afternoon sun, okay? The orchid bark I use is something that's coarse. I use it to, the orchid bark. So let's go back and look at the 4 care tips that I use with my orchids, okay? First is lighting, indirect light, morning sun. The next would be the orchid bark. I use the orchid bark that I get from Lowe's. The next one would be watering. I only water every 2 weeks, twice a month, and that would be it. And the last care tip would be fertilizer. I use the orchid plant food fertilizer or 𝗲𝐸𝐷 that I would sprinkle inside of the media. So those are the 4 care tips. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I'm glad you came on this journey with me today. So I will see you in the next video. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.